Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving head first into the world of investing. You hear about it all the time, right? Stocks, bonds, crypto, but what does it all really mean? Well, we're going to build a super simple visual guide to make sense of the whole thing, starting right now. Okay, so at first glance, the world of investing can look, well, incredibly complex. It's like trying to read a map in a language you've never seen before. There are dozens of terms, categories, arrows going everywhere. It's a lot. And honestly, it can feel pretty overwhelming. So where on earth do you even begin? The key really is to just tune out all that noise and get back to basics. We're going to build our knowledge step by step, almost like we're assembling a powerful financial toolkit piece by piece. Okay, let's open up that toolkit. The very first thing we need to get our heads around is the idea of assets. You can think of pretty much every investment out there as fitting into one of two main toolboxes. So what is an asset? It sounds complicated, but it's not. An asset is simply something you own that has value, and hopefully the potential to be worth even more in the future. So, every asset fits into one of those two toolboxes. First, you've got your financial assets. These are intangible things like contracts or numbers on a screen. And then you have non-monetary assets. These are the real physical items that you can actually hold in your hand. Here's a different way to look at it. See? Financial assets are basically promises on paper, or pixels these days. Think stocks or bonds. Non-monetary assets, on the other hand, are tangible things like gold, art, or even the house you live in. You're probably already familiar with a lot of these non-monetary assets. We're talking about things like property, real estate, precious metals like gold, collectibles like fine art or vintage cars, and even some of the newer digital stuff like cryptocurrencies. All right, let's dive into that first toolbox, financial assets. The single most important category here is something called securities. And trust me, this is where most of the action in investing really happens. So what exactly are securities? Well, think of them as the core tools of investing. They generally come in four main flavors, as you can see right here. But for now, we're just going to focus on the two biggest ones, debt and equity. The easiest way to think about debt securities, which you've probably heard of as bonds, is with this simple phrase, I owe you. When you buy a bond from a company or a government, you're not buying a piece of it, you're acting as their lender. You're the bank. Now, on the complete flip side, when you buy equity securities, like a stock, the phrase totally changes. It becomes, I own you. You're not just lending them money. No, you are becoming a part owner of a tiny piece of that company. So this is the fundamental difference, and it's super important. With debt, you're the lender, and you expect to get your money back with some interest. With equity, you're an owner, which means you share in the risks, but you also share in the potential rewards if the business does well. And get this, even within one category like stocks, you've got different options. Common stock, for instance, often comes with voting rights in the company, but preferred stock usually doesn't. Instead, it gets you first in line when the company pays out profits. It's a trade-off, you see? Okay, so now we've got our core tools down, stocks and bonds. Let's start looking at some of the more specialized, I'd say more advanced instruments you'll find in the big investing toolkit. All right, now we get to derivatives. These are definitely more advanced tools. The key thing you have to remember is that their value is derived from something else. So, for example, you might have a contract whose value is tied to the price of gold. The contract itself is an A bar of gold, but its price moves up or down depending on what gold is doing. There are a few main types you'll hear about. Futures and forwards are basically agreements that lock you into buying or selling something at a future date. It's an obligation. Options are different. They give you the rights, but not the obligation to buy or sell. That flexibility is a really big deal. And then swaps are pretty much just agreements to exchange different kinds of payments. This table really shows the power of options. If you look at the buyer's row, you'll see the key difference. A call option gives you the right to buy a stock at a set price, while a put option gives you the right to sell it. But in both cases, as the buyer, you have the choice, the right, but you're not forced to do anything. That is a pretty powerful position to be in. And of course, we have to talk about the newest tools in the box, crypto assets. These are decentralized digital currencies like Bitcoin that are trying to create a whole new kind of financial system. But as we've all seen, they can be extremely volatile, and they come with a whole lot of risk. Okay, so we've filled our toolkit with all these different instruments, but how are they actually being used out there in the real world? Let's zoom out and take a look at the big picture. Where is all the money on the planet actually invested? This right here is what's known as the global market portfolio. It's basically a snapshot of where all the world's wealth is invested. And you can see, plain as day, stocks or equity make up the biggest slice of the pie. That's followed by government bonds and then investment-grade corporate bonds, which are basically loans to really big, stable companies. Now let's take a magnifying glass to that big purple slice of equity. When we zoom in, we can see which countries own the world's public companies. And while the US has the largest share by a long shot, but you can see just how huge a role investors in China, Europe, and other emerging markets play in the global economy. And just like that, we've gone from that tangled, confusing map to a clear path forward. You now have a mental framework, a foundational map of the main types of investments and how they all fit together in the global economy. So you've seen the toolkit and you've got the blueprint. The only real question left is, what are you going to build on your own financial journey?